Welcome back, family. I've got a little bit of a State of the Union plan for you today just because I'm a little bit, just a little bit annoyed about the state of the camera world and the YouTube world in general right now surrounding the release of Sony's latest, the ZV-E1. Now, this might come off as a little bit of a rant and I might come off pretty salty, but truth of the matter is I'm just really passionate about this stuff. I mean no harm or ill will toward anyone specifically or anything like that. I've just seen some kind of wild comments circulating about this camera and who it is and isn't for. Whatever the case may be, I want to get all of my thoughts into one place about the camera. I will be transparent with you as well. I have not used this camera. I don't have any experience with it, but I have been a Sony shooter for 5+ years in the field doing client work, and I've got a pretty good idea of how the cameras work, and I've read through the spec list. It inherits a lot from the A7S III, which we're shooting on right now, so I've got a pretty good idea of what this camera is all about. I know that the ZV-E1 is aimed at vloggers and content creators, and if you are one of those, then this camera could be great for you, but the comments that I've seen on the internet are mostly from professionals looking to add this to their kit or to replace their A7S III or their FX3, FX30 with this camera, and it simply makes no sense to me. Getting into my thoughts a little bit now surrounding the camera, more than anything, it just confuses me. I don't really know why Sony made this move other than to clean out house for new tech that's on the way. And spoiler alert, that's my big takeaway. That's the one thing I am excited about regarding this release, is that this just means that there is a lot of new fancy tech on the way for the flagships, because let's face it, they're not gonna give us anything else through firmware. So leave a big fat boo, boo in the chat for Sony for not giving us proper firmware updates. But I digress. Another confusing area about this camera to me is who it's for. And while this should be a clear-cut and simple answer, this is where YouTube has kind of annoyed me in the equation, because I feel like all the ambassadors and kind of influencers surrounding all these new Sony cameras have kind of muddied and tainted the waters surrounding who this is for. We all should know that this camera is for vloggers and content creators. And while it has an amazing sensor in it, the same sensor that's in the A7S, the FX3, and even the FX6, I don't think the body that it's in makes good use of that amazing image at all. And I don't think that this camera is suited in any way for professional work. And we see that mainly through the overheating that has been displayed. And this is an area where I will sound just a little bit salty, but my main thing on this channel is keeping it real, and I want to bring things back down to earth for the average person that's looking at the best camera to buy for them. Even with the spectacular specs that it has, I think that Sony majorly crippled it in that small body. And if we want a powerhouse that's still in a small body that does everything this camera does almost better, is the FX30. While the FX30 did already have its heyday on YouTube and there was some excitement surrounding it, I don't think there was nearly as much as there was for the ZV-E1. And the FX30 in many ways is a earth-shattering, groundbreaking tool for creators that want to operate on a budget. The FX30 is so much more suited for professional and long-term client work, or even long-term YouTube work. The camera is not that much bigger than the ZV-E1, and it has such a more robust build and feel and ergonomics and everything else to it that the ZV-E1 just doesn't have. It's in a plastic body, it's built like a toy, and quite frankly, I don't see a place for it when the FX30 exists other than it being full frame. I think Sony knows that full frame is kind of all the hype right now, and look, I shoot on full frame, I love it, but it's quite simply not necessary. So much of Hollywood still shoots Super 35. There's still such a place for that, and not to mention lenses, everything else is so much cheaper for Super 35, and that's where I think the FX30 is such a win. If you're a content creator or somebody trying to build a business, you can do that on the back of the FX30 so easily. I built my career on the Sony a6500, and if you've ever held one of those, they're kind of ancient now. If you look at that compared to the FX30, it is such a quantum leap between the two cameras. And it's just, if the FX30 was available when I was upgrading from the a6500, I don't know that I ever would have gone full frame, because the FX30 is just such a complete all-in-one package. And if you do want that full frame look and feel that bad, then just spend a few $100 extra and get the a7 IV. That's another reason that this camera confuses me, because really all that it has going for it is the size. The a7 IV is such a better and more refined machine for the money, and even though it does deal with overheating as well, you're going to deal with that with the ZV-E1 also, so why not have a better machine and just work around the overheating in your own way? On something like the a7 IV and even the FX30, which is hundreds of dollars cheaper, you get full-size HDMI, you get dual card slots, you get better functions, better dials, better build, better grip, better everything, and It makes no sense to me why anyone would buy the ZV-E1 over anything else in Sony's lineup. Maybe if it was $400 or $500 cheaper, maybe. But other than that, there really is just no reason, in my opinion. I think there are a few things that Sony could have done with the ZV-E1 that would have made it a slam dunk in my eyes, and the first would have been EVF. No matter how crappy or small it is, you know, the A6500 back there has a pretty crappy EVF on it, but it's better than nothing. And they cram an EVF into the RX100 cameras. I have no idea why they couldn't put a little pop-up EVF or something like that in this camera. Another thing they could have done with this camera that would have made it such a home run to me would have been giving it a fixed lens rather than interchangeable lenses. If you're buying something that small and compact, to me the whole point is not having to carry around a bag, not having to carry around lenses, etc. I know that Sony makes some tiny lenses. I know that there's small bags and stuff available. But again, I think the whole reason you buy a camera like that is so that you can carry it in your pocket or just have an all-in-one content creation machine without having to buy anything else. I think an all-in-one contained ecosystem would have been the best way for them to go with this camera. It's why I bought the RX100. It's got the viewfinder, it's got flash, it's got a 24-200 zoom on it, all in my pocket. I don't have to carry a bag, I don't have to carry anything with me to use the camera. And with the ZV-E1, you still have to lug around lenses. And I know that Sony makes smaller lenses and small bags exist and stuff like that. I just think it kind of misses the mark on the audience that it's aimed at. I think if you're vlogging, if they could have just put a wide 16mm or even a 20mm lens on it that's fixed, I think it would have been such a better move than what they went with. And I don't get it. The last thing is something I've already mentioned, and that's simply the price. The price on this camera makes absolutely 0 sense. When stuff like the FX30 exists, and when still pretty capable vlogging cameras and photography cameras like the A6600, the A7C exist, I don't see a reason this camera needed to be above $2,000. Moving into the wrap up now, hopefully I wasn't too much of a Grinch throughout this video. Again, I'm just super passionate about this. I love keeping it real, and I love kind of helping people on their journeys. And I'm seeing a lot of comments from people that are just like, oh, I regret buying my FX30 now that this came out. I regret buying my A7 IV. And it's just not the case. You should be ecstatic about both of those cameras because they're professional workhorse cameras that will get the job done in ways that the ZV-E1 you just can't have the same confidence in. Not even close. If you're buying this for a travel camera, or if you're buying this as like a weekend family camera, or if you're an everyday YouTuber, vlogger, the ZV-E1 is for you. But even then, I would still buy an FX30. I think it's a better camera. I think you can grow more with it. I think that it will have more longevity in the long run. And I still recommend the FX30 to literally anyone that's trying to get into this game. Like anybody that hits me up like, hey, I want to do some client work, I want to get into filmmaking, or even I want to get into YouTube, I'm a vlogger. The FX30 is the camera I immediately point them to because the ecosystem itself just makes more sense, it's more refined, and it's better. You can get much cheaper lenses, and you can still buy full frame lenses for it if you plan on moving to full frame. But the body itself and just the handling, ergonomics, everything else, maybe except for the fact that it is not full frame, are better. I appreciate you guys watching and listening to me rant a little bit. Promise there's more fun stuff on the way, more FX6 content coming as well in the pipeline. And until then, just drop a comment and let me know what you think. How did you feel about the video? What are you shooting on? What are you looking to shoot on? How do you feel about the ZV-E1? And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe and like the video and join the fam. I appreciate 800 subscribers. This is so huge. We're seeing a lot of growth lately, and I just, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it so much. I cannot wait until we can hit 1,000 and grow the fam even bigger. I appreciate you so much for tuning in and for hanging out with me on this one, and always remember that you are blessed and you are loved. And as always, I'll be back soon.